I need to pay for my dad's life-saving surgery. I told her. The response I got was a brick wall. Noah, don't be so ungrateful, Sharon said, her voice sharp. I'm good to you. You know I am. But the economy is a mess right now. We have household expenses. The company needs a rainy day fund, and Ryan's tuition isn't going to pay itself. I said nothing. I was making a 7-figure salary, and our tech startup was on the verge of an IPO. How did she spin this narrative? My dad was fading. He lay in a hospital bed, his face pale, his hand clutching a crumpled-up bill from the admissions desk. Noah, it's nothing, son, he whispered, his voice barely a breath. Just my old ticker acting up again. Don't you two fight over it. Even now, he was trying to run interference for her. Looking at my aging father, I felt something twist violently in my chest. The doctor pulled me into the hallway. His tone was calm, but the words were non-negotiable. Your father's heart valve needs to be replaced, and soon. The out-of-pocket cost will be around $20,000. The family needs to make a decision. We can't put this off. I nodded, pulled out my phone, and called Sharon. Sharon, Dad needs surgery. It's $20,000. Can you wire the money over? There were 2 seconds of silence on the other end. Then her voice cold as ice. $20,000? Noah, are you insane? He's an old man. Why would a minor procedure cost $20,000? I fought to keep my voice level. It's not a minor procedure. It's a valve replacement. The doctor said it can't wait. She let out a short, sharp laugh, as if I just told her the most ridiculous joke. Hospitals are always trying to scare you into something. It's always surgery, surgery, surgery. Just have him stay for a few days of observation. Keep him on his meds. See if we can manage it without cutting him open. I clenched my jaw. Sharon, that's my father. Her tone remained infuriatingly placid. Of course, I know he's your father, but the company's cash flow is tight right now. We haven't seen the returns from the first half of the year, and Ryan's tuition for the prep school is due. She sighed, as if explaining a complex business problem to a child. It's not that we can't come up with $20,000. It's that it isn't necessary. I've seen it 100 times with the elderly. You spend a fortune, and in the end, you lose them and the money. It's a bad investment. I stood in the sterile hospital corridor, my hands balled into fists, my knuckles white. The company was pulling in millions in profit every year, and she couldn't spare 20 grand? In that single blinding moment, I understood. In her eyes, my father's life was just a project with a low ROI. My mind flashed back 5 years. Our company was just a dream. We were broke, living in a cramped walk-up on the outskirts of Austin. No AC in the brutal Texas summer. No heat in the winter. My dad drove up from his small farm in the hill country. He'd sold the place, the only home he'd ever known, to give us the seed money. He'd also brought a sack of homegrown tomatoes. I remembered Sharon eating one, smiling. Robert, these are so much sweeter than the ones at the store, she'd said. When we make it big, we'll move you into the city with us. My dad had just waved his hand with a bashful smile. I'm old. I'd just be in the way. You two just build a good life for yourselves. Well, we made it. We bought a sprawling house in a gated community, got new cars, and sent Ryan to the best private school in the state. But Dad was still living alone in a tiny rental back in his hometown. I'd brought up moving him in with us a few times, but Sharon always had an excuse. He wouldn't be comfortable here. He doesn't like going out. What if he falls? It would be a huge liability. And I let it drop. It wasn't until the day that I realized she'd seen him as a liability all along. I went back into the room and looked at my father's face, a roadmap of wrinkles and worry. A stone settled in my gut. Noah, he said, his voice weak, let's just go home. We'll save the money. I don't want to cause you two any trouble. My eyes burned. I turned and walked out of the room. In that instant, I decided I was done letting her control every aspect of my life. She could treat my father as less than human, but I wouldn't. It was 1 a.m. when I got home. Sharon was still up, dressed in a silk robe, typing on her laptop. What did the hospital say? She asked without looking up. 20,000. Has to be in their account by 8 a.m. tomorrow, or they give his slot to someone else. I slapped the payment slip down on her keyboard. She frowned. Noah, I looked it up. The typical copay for a heart valve is under 5,000. The hospital is ripping you off. She pushed her gold-rimmed glasses up her nose, her tone flat. I've already had accounting set up a monthly stipend for his stay, $500. Anything more than that has to go through a non-budgeted expense request. That'll take at least a month to approve. A month. My laugh was cold. He can barely breathe right now. She closed her laptop, her voice becoming soft, gentle as a knife's edge. Then he can come home and we'll manage his condition with medication. It will probably be fine. Doctors love to catastrophize. I took a deep breath, forcing the rage back down into my chest. Sharon, I'm not negotiating with you. I'm telling you to send the money. She finally looked up at me, her eyes like those of a CEO addressing an insubordinate employee. Noah, we're in pre-IPO quiet period. Cash flow is everything. If I give you $20,000 today, your father will be asking for 50 tomorrow. Do you have any concept of fiscal discipline? I just nodded, turned, and walked toward the front door. Where are you going? The office. What for? To get my own money. I heard her chuckle behind me. Don't forget, I'm the CFO. If you want to withdraw a dime, it has to go through me. The door clicked shut and into conversation. I drove to the office. In the finance department, Sharon's assistant, Zoe, was still working late. Mr. Miller, transfer $200,000 to my personal account. Zoe's face went pale. Ms. Vance's orders. Any transfer requires her dual signature authorization. I nodded, not want to put her in a bad spot. I turned and walked to the server room. 3 years ago, I'd built the company's entire internal network myself. I left a backdoor. 10 minutes later, I was looking at the bank statements. Over the last 12 months, Sharon had transferred a total of $5 million under line items like marketing expenses and consulting fees to a shell company called Stellar Solutions, LLC. The recipient on the account, Leo Carter. Leo Carter. My brain felt like it had short-circuited. It couldn't be him. Leo was Sharon's college boyfriend, the one who dumped her before moving abroad. I couldn't believe it. Those two, they were back together. She was using our money to support her lover. And my father's $20,000? Denied as a non-essential expenditure. I took screenshots. I saved the logs. As I walked out of the building, I stopped at a 24-hour convenience store. A moment later, a message popped up on my phone. It was Sharon, buying cigarettes and liquor in the middle of the night. Another unbudgeted expense. This is the last time, Noah. I stared at the screen and started to laugh. So that's how it was. Without her approval, I wasn't entitled to a single dollar I had earned. The next morning, I was back at Austin General. My father was propped up against the pillows, his complexion even grayer than the night before. Noah, let's just go home. Let's not do this. I opened the container of oatmeal I'd brought and handed it to him. Dad, just eat. Don't worry about a thing. The money's been paid. It hadn't. I lowered my head and texted David Chun, my old college roommate who was now a partner at a downtown law firm. 10 minutes later, he replied, $5 million? Noah, she's practically cleaned you out. What do you want to do? I want to sue her. I want her to walk away with nothing. I want to ruin her. Get your evidence together. Come to my office. We'll get started. I looked up to see my father slowly, dutifully, spooning the oatmeal into his mouth. Done. Thanks, man. I typed back. Then I sent a message to Sharon. If the $20,000 isn't in the hospital's account by 8 p.m. tonight, don't blame me for what happens next. 2 minutes later, a single-character reply came back. Okay. I put my phone away and tucked the blanket around my father's legs. Dad, do you trust me? He patted the back of my hand, just like he used to when I was a kid with a fever. You're my son. Who else am I going to trust? My eyes burned again. I turned and left the room, heading straight for David's office. In his conference room, I slid my phone across the polished table. $5 million. Stellar Solutions. Leo Carter. My voice was raw with suppressed fury, and my dad's 20 grand was a non-essential expenditure. David swiped through the images, his expression growing grimmer by the second. Noah, this is worse than I thought. This isn't just a marital dispute or her being stingy. This is massive, premeditated asset transfer. And you've almost certainly been cheated on. He pointed to the transaction details. Marketing expenses, consulting fees, it doesn't matter how pretty the labels are. The money trail ends at a company with zero business relationship to your own, and the beneficiary is your wife's old flame. That's a smoking gun in court. I want her to leave with nothing. I repeated, locking eyes with David. I want her to spit back every last cent she swallowed. We need an ironclad chain of evidence, David said, tapping his fingers on the table. The bank records are just the start. We need to prove Stellar Solutions is a shell, prove the affair between her and Leo Carter, and prove the illegality of these payments. Also, what's your equity situation? Your legal standing in the company? That will affect how the assets are divided. I nodded. We had founded the company together, but for operational simplicity, Sharon was named CEO and CFO, while I was the CTO, handling the tech and product side. In terms of equity, she held 51%, and I held 49%. I'd never cared before. We were family. What was the point of splitting hairs? Now I saw that a single percentage point was the difference between a partner and an employee. I'll find a way to get higher-level financial data from the company, I said. As for Sharon, I paused. I'll keep her calm. Leaving the law firm, I called her. The moment she picked up, I forced my breathing to slow, pitching my voice to sound weary, defeated. Sharon, my dad. He's not doing well. She was silent on the other end, probably trying to read my tone. I kept the act up, injecting a note of pleading. The 20,000. What if I consider it a loan? From the company? I'll sign over some of my equity to cover it. Please? He doesn't have much time. Just as I'd hoped, her tone softened, laced with the smug superiority of someone granting a favor. Noah, if you'd just been reasonable from the start, we could have avoided all this. I'm not a monster, but the company has rules. Look, I'll have accounting make an exception. We'll use the emergency reserve fund to cover it for now. We can discuss the rest, based on his prognosis. She was still calculating, still doling out charity. But I needed time. Okay, thank you, I managed to say, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. You're welcome. But this is a one-time thing, she said, her voice reverting to its usual tone of absolute control. Are you coming home for dinner? No. I hung up. A few minutes later, a notification popped up on my phone. A transfer of $20,000. I felt no relief, only a cold, biting irony. This charity, bought with my feigned submission and my father's suffering, felt like a slap in the face, shattering the last of my illusions about our marriage. I immediately paid the hospital. Watching my father being wheeled into the operating room, a small measure of peace settled over me. The surgery was a success. When they brought him back to the room, he was still pale, but his breathing was steady and even. The weight on my chest lifted slightly. While sitting by his bedside, I called the private investigator David had recommended. The targets are a company called Stellar Solutions LLC and its principal, Leo Carter. Also, the CFO of my company, Sharon Vance. I want to know about all their financial dealings, their connections, and their personal relationship. For the next few days, I spent my days at the hospital with my dad and my evenings at home, playing the part of the dutiful husband who had finally seen the light. Sharon seemed pleased with my return to reason. She even started talking to me about the IPO preparations again, her words full of excitement for the future. She probably thought I'd finally accepted her philosophy of budget performance management, that I'd agreed my father's life was worth less than a stock ticker symbol. She had no idea about the storm gathering beneath my calm surface. The investigator was fast. Stellar Solutions was a ghost, a shell company with no actual business operations. Leo Carter had flamed out overseas and come crawling back to Sharon, and they'd quickly rekindled their old romance. The money, our money, had been spent on a luxury condo, high-end cars, designer clothes. They even had a secret home together. What sent a fresh surge of rage through me was the packet of photos the PI sent over. In them, Sharon and Leo were all over each other, leaving a boutique hotel downtown. The timestamp on the photos was from the same week she had denied my father's medical expenses due to a cash flow shortage. She wasn't frugal. She had just drawn a line, and my dad and I were on the wrong side of it. Our shared wealth was nothing more than an ATM for her to fund her lavish life with her old boyfriend. At the same time, using my technical backdoor, I gained access to the core database of the company's financial system. I encrypted and downloaded everything. Internal payment vouchers, approval workflows, records of related party transactions. The evidence was damning. Sharon wasn't just siphoning funds to Stellar Solutions. She was using a complex web of transactions to inflate costs and hide profits, cooking the books in preparation for the IPO. I organized, cataloged, and backed up everything, then handed it all to David. This is more than enough, David said, his eyes sharp as he looked over the files. We filed for divorce, claiming malicious transfer of marital assets, and petitioned that she forfeit her share. At the same time, as a shareholder, you can report her to the authorities for embezzlement. This is enough to bury her. The day my father was discharged, I brought him home to our house. The thought that he had sold his own home to help us get started, only to be denied money to save his own life, made my stomach churn. When Sharon saw me helping him into the guest room, her face darkened, but she managed to maintain a veneer of civility in front of him. After Dad was settled, I went into my study. Sharon followed me in and closed the door. "Noah, what is this? I thought your father's surgery was done. Why isn't he going back home?" she demanded. I looked at her, at the face that had become so alien to me. "Dad needs to recover, and it's easier to look after him here. This is his home," I said calmly. "Without the money from his house, this house wouldn't exist. That was a gift." Sharon's voice rose. "Noah, don't forget, the company is at a critical stage. What will it look like to have a sick, old man living here? It's bad for appearances, and I don't have the energy to take care of him." "I'm not asking you to," I said, walking to my desk and picking up a folder. "Take a look at this." She took it hesitantly. After flipping through just a few pages, the color drained from her face. It was a selection of the money transfer screenshots and the photos of her and Leo. You had me investigated? She looked up, her eyes wide with shock and panic, her voice shrill. If I hadn't, how would I have known my dad's life was worth less than the cash you used to keep your boy toy? I sneered. $5 million, Sharon. You're quite generous. She tried to bluff. That was a legitimate business investment. Leo's project has a lot of potential. An investment? I cut her off, pointing at a photo. Does investing require you to be hanging all over him? Does it require you to sleep with him? Or does it require funneling money into a shell corporation? Save the bullshit, Sharon. She looked at my face and knew it was over. Her posture hardened. Fine. What do you want, Noah? Don't forget, I'm a majority shareholder and the CEO. If you make a scene, you'll walk away with nothing. Really? I picked up another folder from the desk. This is the divorce petition drafted by my lawyer, along with a motion to freeze your assets and a preliminary report to the DA's office for felony embezzlement. Why don't you read it and see what I'm going to get? She snatched the documents from my hand, her own hands starting to tremble as she read. You want me to walk away with nothing? You wouldn't dare, she shrieked. Noah, do you have any idea what you're doing? You'll destroy this family. You'll kill the IPO. The IPO? I looked at her like she was a clown. Going public with fraudulent financials? Sharon, you should be less worried about the IPO and more worried about your indictment. I walked to the window, looking out at the garden we had once built together. My lawyer and I will be at his office at 9 a.m. tomorrow. If you cooperate, maybe you'll get to keep enough to live on. If you don't, I turned back, my gaze like ice. We'll see you in court, and we'll make sure Leo Carter returns every single dollar he took. Sharon collapsed into a chair, the arrogance and control gone, replaced by a gray mask of terror. I didn't give her a second glance as I left the study. In the living room, my father was standing there, his face etched with worry. Noah, is this? Because of me, he stammered. I walked over and put a hand on his thin shoulder, just as he had held me when I was learning to walk. Dad, this has nothing to do with you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. It's my fault. I was blind, but not anymore. From now on, I'm in charge of this house. I helped him toward the guest room. You rest here and get your strength back. From now on, I'll take care of you. My father looked at me, his cloudy eyes shining with tears. He just nodded a single, heavy gesture. After seeing him to his room, I stood on the second-floor landing. I could hear Sharon's muffled, broken sobs coming from the study, but I felt nothing. The love we'd shared, the life we'd built, it had all been eroded away by her cold calculations and a $5 million betrayal. The warm lights of the living room below couldn't penetrate the cold resolve in my heart. This war was just beginning. The first mediation session was a disaster. Sharon, attempting to reclaim her CFO persona, had hired the city's top corporate litigation shark. She was dressed in a sharp power suit, her makeup a flawless mask. Her lawyer immediately went on the attack, questioning the legality of my evidence, claiming the data I'd acquired through a backdoor was corporate espionage and hinting I was fabricating a case out of spite. David was ready. He calmly dismantled each point. He presented a portion of the fund transfers, already notarized, that were public record, proving their legal acquisition and stating this was just the tip of the iceberg. My client, as a co-founder and 49% shareholder, has a legal right to be informed of and investigate anomalous financial activities that threaten the company's core interests and their shared marital assets. Ms. Vance's actions have severely damaged both. When David mentioned that we had already submitted preliminary evidence to the district attorney's office, Sharon's lawyer flinched. They hadn't expected us to move so fast or with such conviction. Sharon finally broke, glaring at me across the table, her voice a mix of fury and a faint, desperate plea. Noah, do we really have to do this? After all these years, we built this company from nothing. Can you really stand to watch it all burn down? I looked at her, and the last flicker of emotion I had for her died. I'm not the one who torched it, Sharon. You are. You did it when you started draining my bank account to fund your pet project. I did not, she snapped, but her shifting eyes gave her away. No. I pulled out one of the PI's photos of her and Leo shopping at a luxury boutique, the timestamp perfectly matching a $100,000 promotional expense payout. Do I need to lay out the accounting ledgers from Leo's little shell company? I asked, or the source of the down payment for that new condo in his name? Sharon's face went white. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her lawyer sat beside her, frowning deeply, his entire strategy obviously derailed by evidence he hadn't been expecting. The first round ended in a stalemate. Sharon refused to sign the divorce agreement, insisting on taking it to court. I knew she was stalling, trying to find a way to fight back, or maybe just to coordinate with Leo. Her counterattack came quickly. First, she used her authority as CFO to try and freeze my executive accounts and dividend payouts, citing a company-wide audit. I was prepared. The core technology and all data backups were already secured under my control. She knew she couldn't push too far without crippling the company she was trying to save. Next, she played the sympathy card. Not with me, but with our son. She started showing up at Ryan's school, buying him the newest game consoles, taking him to expensive sushi restaurants. She would cry to him, telling him his father had become radical and paranoid because of his grandfather's illness and was going to destroy their family and the company, leaving Ryan with nothing. Ryan was only in middle school. He was confused and overwhelmed by the sudden chaos and his mother's tears. He called me one night, his voice choked with sobs. "Dad, what's going on with you and Mom? She said you're trying to bankrupt the company. Is that true? Am I not going to be able to stay in school?" I gripped the phone, my heart feeling like it was being pierced by 1,000 tiny needles. I kept my voice as calm as I could. "Ryan, Mom and I are having some problems we need to work out. But no matter what happens, I will always protect you, and you will always be in school. What Mom is telling you isn't the whole story. You have to trust me, okay?" After hanging up, my anger burned hotter than ever. She was using our child as a weapon in her dirty war. Her most disgusting move was when she and her mother showed up to see my father. They came bearing a fruit basket, but their words were laced with poison. Sharon's mother, my eternally snobbish mother-in-law, took my dad's hand with a look of fake sincerity. "Robert, you know how hard these kids have worked to get where they are? The IPO is such a critical step. We can't let family matters derail their future. Now that you're feeling better, perhaps it's best if you go back home to recuperate. Sharon will make sure all your expenses are covered, of course. After all, having you here, it's putting a strain on their marriage." My father, lying in his bed, went from pale to red, then back to a sickly gray. He was a simple, honest man who had never been subjected to such humiliation in his life. His lips trembled. "Yes, of course," he finally stammered. I'll have Noah take me back." I had just gotten home and heard the entire exchange from the doorway. A hot rush of blood went to my head. I threw the door open and stared coldly at my expert actress of a mother-in-law and my stone-faced wife. "Dad, you're not going anywhere. This is your home." I put a steadying hand on my father's trembling shoulder, then turned my gaze on the two women. "The only ones leaving are you. As for the IPO, Sharon, why didn't you think about the IPO when you and Leo were bleeding the company dry?" My mother-in-law started to speak, but I cut her off. "Get out. Don't bother my father again. If you want to pull a stunt, you pull it on me." Sharon's desperate struggles only hastened her downfall. The PI delivered the final blow. He managed to get a recording of Leo bragging to a friend after a few drinks, boasting about financial maneuvers that lined up perfectly with the data we had, creating an undeniable corroboration. More importantly, we found the accountant who had helped Sharon cook the books for Stellar Solutions. Faced with David's legal pressure and the promise of a lighter sentence for cooperating, he agreed to testify that Sharon had directed him to create fake invoices and transfer the funds. At the same time, I met with a few of the company's original senior partners who had long been suspicious of Sharon's opaque financials. I showed them a sanitized version of the evidence. When they saw how badly the company had been fleeced, they were furious and pledged their full support. Attacked from all sides, Sharon's defenses crumbled. The court's order came down, officially freezing all of Sharon's personal accounts and the corporate account for Stellar Solutions. The condo she'd bought for Leo had a lien slapped on it. Faced with losing everything, Leo, the spineless leech, folded completely. He contacted David on his own, offering to provide every last detail of Sharon's embezzlement scheme in exchange for a deal with the prosecution that would leave him with a fraction of his assets. Sharon was utterly alone. When we met again at the negotiating table, she was a different person. The polished, commanding executive was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed, exhausted woman. Her lawyer was new, a pragmatist. The conversation was no longer about if she had transferred the assets, but about how to divide what little was left and how she would face the consequences. Buried under a mountain of irrefutable evidence, Sharon signed the divorce papers. She relinquished all of her equity in the company, all real estate purchased during our marriage, and the majority of our liquid assets. She would keep only a few personal belongings. Furthermore, she would have to face the full legal repercussions of her embezzlement. She didn't even fight for custody of Ryan. Maybe she was too ashamed to face him, or maybe she figured he was better off with the parent who still had a future. After signing the last page, she looked up at me, her expression a tangled mess of hatred, regret, and perhaps a flicker of relief. You won, Noah. I gathered the documents, my face impassive. I never wanted to win. I just wanted to take back what belonged to me, my father, and my son. I wanted to save the company we built from the person who was destroying it. She was silent for a moment, then asked if I had just given you the $20,000 that first night, would things be different? I looked at her, said nothing, and walked out of the room. There are no what-ifs. The $20,000 was just the spark. The injustice and her betrayal were the explosives that had been piling up for years. My father got stronger every day. A genuine smile returned to his face. He stopped talking about going back home and started carefully adapting to his new life, taking walks in a neighborhood park and playing chess with the other old men. After a period of confusion and with a lot of patient conversations, Ryan began to understand what had happened. He became more mature, more focused on his schoolwork, as if trying to make me proud. I poured my energy back into the company. Cleaning up Sharon's financial mess was a nightmare, and the IPO was off the table indefinitely. But the company's foundation was solid, and the core team was still with me. We were rebuilding, slowly but surely, from the rubble. A month later, I got a call from David. Sharon Vance and Leo Carter have been formally arrested on charges of felony embezzlement. The case is moving forward. I stood at my office window, watching the traffic flow on the street below. I didn't feel the thrill of victory, just the weary calm that comes after a violent storm has passed. When I got home, my dad was in the kitchen, clumsily trying to make a stew he'd seen on a cooking show, wanting to help me and Ryan build up our strength. My son was in his room, reading his English homework aloud. The air smelled of savory food and old books. This is what a home is supposed to feel like. I walked into the kitchen and took the ladle from my father's hand. Here, Dad, let me. He gave me a gentle, toothy grin and stepped aside. Outside, the sun was setting, casting a warm, peaceful glow over everything. I knew the road ahead was long. The company needed a complete overhaul, my father needed continued care, and my son needed guidance. But I wasn't alone anymore, and I was no longer a hostage to a toxic love. I stirred the stew, the rich aroma filling the kitchen. Here's to the past, to the pain, and to the rebirth. Here's to the future, challenging and full of hope, and finally back in my own hands. End.